So, hi everyone. I'm here with Russell Janab. He's the CEO of UmbrellaTech, and you're in the AI space, but also particularly in terms of the AI agent space. When we first met, and I know you had some pretty interesting demos when we first chatted.
Oh, thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to share some news about Umbrella.
So, to start off, I wanted to ask about where does the market sit in terms of AI adoption and some of the latest kind of tech? I know you guys have been on the forefront of some of that, but it'd be good to get your perspective in terms of what are you seeing in the market, and what are you seeing in terms of interest in the market in particular?
So it's a bit of a mixed bag, to be quite frank. From a holistic view, it seems like the market is ready for AI and the benefits and adoption of AI. And on the upper layers, they are eager to start implementing AI, automation. There's tremendous cost savings and efficiencies there. But as you dive in a little bit, you start to notice a little bit of resistance. It's general human sentiment. You are afraid of what you don't know. And mostly people are concerned of what the end picture looks like once AI is adopted. So there's definitely some fear elements to this.
It did feel like we went through this almost like massive kind of adoption, particularly with ChatGPT, OpenAI stuff coming out, and like it was super exciting. Everyone got super excited about. Do you think where we've gone into that sort of like the hype meets reality, and now it's getting into the how do we actually implement some of that, which is why you get a little bit more of the push and pull in terms of resistance because it's real use cases kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody's familiar with ChatGPT. It's like using your smartphone. Kids are using it for school. If you have a quick question, people would probably use ChatGPT to ask rather than do a Google search. So you're definitely starting to notice these trends creep up, and it'll become a normal part of life. However, one of the biggest challenges is as a business owner or a corporation, you're looking at AI and you said, okay, ChatGPT is cool, but what are some applications, realistic usage or use cases that will help me transform my business and bring in some of these advantages? So that remains a bit of a question mark, and a lot of companies require some hand holding and navigation as to how they can develop applications that fit and without extreme disruption to their business.
Mm. And what are some of those use cases you're seeing? I know that you developed almost like an agent AI, like a voice AI. That was where we first chatted. But how does that translate into what people then actually adopt and the use cases actually on the floor? Which are the ones that where are people looking at the moment?
So, yes, we've developed what we call hyper-realistic conversational AI, and the use case has been mostly customer service with a variety of flavors. As you know, Chris, we're in the accounts receivable or collections. So we're
Mm.
trying to help some of the pain points. And one of the most striking pain points in collections is resources, people to come work in the centers. So I wouldn't say that we're definitely being innovative in pioneering the solution, but we're not the first to try and bring in something like this. I'm sure you're very familiar with intelligent IVRs. So IVRs was a first or second attempt at automating some of these, the press one for this, press
Mm.
two, keywords. And we see versions of them on the web chat that it has to pick up specific keywords. So maybe rather than looking at AI that as a revolutionary technology, we can look at it as an iteration of bringing this to a little bit more efficiency, more fluidity. And right now, we've been quite successful with introducing the customer service agents as collectors, transfer agents, customer support, welcome calls. Hi, how can I help you?
Mm.
Even replacing some of those payment IVRs.
Mm.
So rather than inputting your credit card information, you actually now have a human being or a human like agent that's powered by AI that can give you account inquiries, answer all your questions, answer your billing, whatever questions you may have, except a credit card payment over the phone.
Mm. So that sort of use case is almost like it's an intelligent replacement to the IVR to a certain extent, which is like that's an easy place to plug it in because it's probably a smarter way of doing it where you can get to the end of the menu quicker than you can if you just by pressing the buttons. We all remember that.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to point out that even though this may sound like it's an iteration over IVRs, they're very vastly
Mm.
different. IVRs are clunky, they're frustrating, they're very narrow, limited use case. If they don't pick up specifically what they're designed for, then the interaction ends and you get transferred to a live agent. Success rate of an IVR, and to simplify it, is if you talk to somebody, you always say, I don't have patience. I'm always like 0000 or live agent to bypass the IVR and finally speak to a live agent. We're seeing a lot more success with an AI agent.
Mm. And one of the features that I did see when we were chatting, because we were over in Canada, was multilingual capability as well, which I thought I thought that was pretty interesting, which is something you don't see normally, and particularly even within a conversation, you can switch languages. I thought that was pretty neat.
So those are some of the benefits, and not just strictly to our use case or our products. AI helps break barriers for languages. In Canada, it's a very multicultural country. You have a lot of languages that are being spoken. Of course, officially, French is our second language, but other than that, there's a lot of communities: Italian, Polish, Arabic, you name it, Asian, and so on and so forth. So one of the challenges we faced, for example, was if you're running a contact center and you're reaching out to a customer where perhaps English is not their first language and they're a lot more comfortable with Arabic or Mandarin, and they usually struggle. At that point, you have a choice. Either find an agent that speaks that language, or hopefully somebody at their household is able to translate. But if these two cases are not available, then you're really stuck.
Mm.
Here's where the AI comes in handy. Our AI agents would immediately switch. We support 128 languages, would converse with the client or the customer, and at the end would translate as part of the results reporting or whatever may be the case to management or the contact center. So really, truly breaks the language barriers.
Mm. And are you finding that interest from clients? I mean, I know there's been this groundswell, as we said, around AI, but is the interest really around how do I supplement resource or find cheaper cost? Or and then the other angle is just better customer treatment to a certain extent, getting to the answer quicker. Where do you think the balance is? And I suppose, do you see a different kind of balance between different regions in the world as well?
There's immediate benefits. You'll see cost savings, you'll see
Mm,
resources if it's a pain point, efficiencies. But from what we're starting to see, it's mostly the focus on efficiencies and better customer
mm,
experience. So I was on the phone the other day trying to rent a car, and I was on hold for 45 minutes
yeah.
until I was connected to a live agent. For that 45 minutes, you could have had an AI customer service agent that would easily have helped you with your needs,
Mhm.
integrating with their backend system to rent you a car. That's an example.
Do you think we're going to see the systems where you call in, it says you're in the queue, press one for a callback, right? So do you think we're going to see that? It's like you're in a queue to speak to a live agent and press one to speak to our automated agent now, which is it's the same kind of thing, but a different spin on it. Did you mean? Which is just to say you can wait an hour and a half or you can deal with it now, but it's going to be more an automated fashion, and then you can still get through to an agent.
Absolutely. So that's actually already live. So
Mm,
one of our customers are using this model. And a lot of people were like, no, I want to wait for a live agent. I'm not sure what this AI agent.
mm,
And some people are like, I don't have a lot of time, so let me give this a shot. And
mm.
they may start with a negative sentiment, but they are pleasantly surprised in most cases that this is quite efficient. It's capable of understanding what you want. I'll talk to you like a person and I'll execute on what your requirements and needs are.
Yeah. Do you know what the split is on that in terms of like the number of people who want to speak to an agent versus will pound out to speak to an automated agent? You got any sense on what that kind of split is at the moment? Because it'd be interesting to see how that changes over time as we sort of adopt it. You remember back in the days of self-service web portals or turning off paper statements, none of us wanted to do it. Now we kind of can't live without it on our phone. So it's kind of like we have this psychology kind of changes within humans as we get used to it and we trust it more.
Yeah, absolutely. A really basic good example of this is I recall almost 10 years ago when you'd go to a Walmart, they were, people cashiers and then
Mm,
self-checkout. And there were even some pushback and resistance by customers that they didn't like seeing the self-checkout because it's self-checkout, it's getting a little bit more automated. You don't have that human touch,
mm,
which some people enjoy. And now I find, and I was one of those people, and now I find myself always gravitating to self-checkout. I feel
mm.
like I'm quicker that way. I can bag my own stuff, and people start to look more and more towards self-checkout. So I think it's just a time and a comfort thing. But to your point, our statistics have indicated in the collection space specifically that people tend to seek out speaking to an AI agent over a live agent most of the time.
Mm,
Actually, interestingly, one of our clients has reported that over a few years, they've noticed people calling in after hours, 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the
interesting.
morning, to try and avoid speaking to a live agent, hoping to hit an IVR to help them with their needs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're seeing that they enjoy speaking to an AI agent.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Is just around the fear around talking about debt or the embarrassment around that, and so it's a way of avoiding the conversation but still dealing with it.
Absolutely. An AI agent, Umbrella's AI agent has an empathy engine that's programmed to
Mm,
be empathetic, never abrasive, always compliant, always following regulations. So you never really have a bad day with an AI agent.
yeah, yeah. It's very interesting in terms of like the rollout and like how it's expanding across. I mean, where do you see it going, I suppose, from the next stage in terms of like how it expands from here, do you think?
We're going to start to see a lot more adoption and maybe not necessarily on the customer experience. That's going to be the first phase,
Mm,
customer experience, AI agents. But we're seeing companies adopt AI for a lot of different uses. Amazon just reported almost 40% in savings in their quality assurance department because the code, they're leveraging AI to help them write code. And
mm.
that code comes out pretty well, not requiring a lot of quality assurance. As a result, they scaled down their QA department and they reallocated the resources, people, and funds somewhere else. So we're seeing trends as companies figure out where they can leverage where they can leverage AI to help them recognize those efficiencies.
It does feel like a lot of us, we've heard a lot about it, and we're a bit like deer staring at the headlights to a certain extent. It's almost like, where do I start? Where do I start looking at this stuff? I've seen it on my home computer. I've had some funny conversations translating stuff into Shakespearean speak or whatever it is, but how do I actually make a difference in my business? And there's all these big plans out there, but I suppose it's getting down to the nuts and bolts. How do you try and get people to start to think about that?
I would say recognize within the company repetitive tasks or a department that has a lot of repetition, mundane stuff. It could be analytical, it could be customer service, and do a little bit of research. You don't want to use an AI out of the box like ChatGPT. Obviously, you're looking for somebody perhaps to program a specific flavor for you that's more specific to your needs.
Mm,
And if you have an idea of something that you can, that's always continuously and constantly the same, you would probably be able to use AI to compensate,
mm.
augment, or even replace some of that mundane.
I mean, and a big piece of pushback that came up was is really around hallucinations that come up. I suppose that's always talked about in terms of the models that are being used and whether you can whether they're trustworthy, those kind of things. What's your reaction to that, particularly in terms of I suppose QA, making sure that you're actually monitoring what's being done, making sure what's being said is accurate, those kind of things, because this is happening on a much wider scale than an agent, right? Because you're going to using it for volume.
Absolutely. So that's always been a fear and one of the factors of hesitation for a lot of corporations when they're embarking on their AI journey or they're considering AI products. They're always worried about a class action lawsuit if the AI steps out of bounds, out of
Mm,
context, or says something that it's not supposed to. There was an instant there where a chat bot powered by AI for one of the airlines started refunding people when it wasn't appropriate to do so.
mm,
And
mm,
that's a problem financially, of course. So I don't know what companies are doing, but I can give you an idea of what Umbrella is doing. So what we spent majority, we've been in the market for almost 2 years now. We spent almost a year strictly building a protective layer of software and code that sort of sits on top of the AI. The idea, and this was quite challenging to do because on one hand, you don't want to restrict the AI and choke it that you take that humanistic conversational fluid element out of it. On the other hand, it's not, you shouldn't allow it to be free to speak out of context and say what it wants, irrespective, and it could be something inappropriate. So it was finding that right balance and translating that into sort of a wall of
mm.
software that would confine the AI to speak and play within it to remain or sound human, but at the same time not step out of bounds, out of context, and maybe be abrasive or inappropriate in any sense.
And are you finding that, say, for example, taking in collections, the QA process, making sure they've got appropriate following policies and procedures, those kind of things, are you finding that the companies, for example, would use the same QA processes over AI as they would on over agents, or there is it they very much want it as a here you are, it's in a box, set it running, and I just want to just assurance and report that everything's compliant. What kind of approach are you coming across the most?
We're finding that it's an augmented model. So we
Mm,
had one of our clients, and let me just be very clear. Good people are very hard to find always.
mm,
So we had a client that was in pain looking for resources to help him, and his QA department was top notch. However, leveraging our QA solution, he was able to redeploy 6 out of the 7 full-time QA agents to do
mm,
supervision, to do manual work, training, whatever his pain points are. And now he's down to one person that's leveraging our automated AI QA reporting that
mm,
would do the job. Now, of course, a human will always have that eye from experience, especially if you're a senior agent. But RQA can replace a junior to intermediate agent. It
Mm.
can translate 128 languages. It'll always be consistent. It'll never have a bad day versus a good day. It can do a thorough job. It can identify weakness, strengths, and areas of improvement. So you can push training. So there are definitely tremendous advantages. And as a result, it would allow you to redeploy your resources elsewhere.
Yeah. Even since, and it was this time last year almost that we first chatted. Even since then, the models seem to have grown further, right? So they've got the larger models. They got more tokens than they used to have. The new models coming out. There's a new one the other week from Meta that came out as an example. How do you think companies are going to have to react to that in terms of the models they use, whether the new models are actually appropriate to use, if that actually generates a better output as well? What's your approach around updating models or actually adopting new models essentially?
We have the advantage of being an AI company. So we're always looking at different models, we're evaluating, and we're leveraging different models for different purposes. There are models that are excellent for customer experience and interaction and client facing. There are models that are much better suited for analytical work. And we always get to fine tune our products. And we built it in a way that you can just plug and play different models, of course, with our
Mm,
code layer sitting on top. Companies may not necessarily have the luxury to do that. But if they're leveraging a vendor, then the onus is on the vendor to pick the best model for the purposes where the application is sitting on top. So the application should really be robust enough to be able to plug and play different models in there.
mm. And it feels like even within the AI world, sort of things seem to have slowed down a little bit over the last 6 months. And I know there's been some discussion around whether there isn't new data that's naturally coming out to be able to train them on, but also there's more concerns from a legislation point of view around protections being put in place. So it feels like its development seems to have slowed down. Are you seeing that from a vendor point of view as well, which is again getting into the execution rather than developing new stuff or pushing the frontier forward?
So that's an interesting question, and it's actually a great question. So we're definitely seeing slowdown, not in our space specifically, because accounts receivable is a little bit, there's a bit of a lag with technology, but we're seeing a slowdown in other corporations. And I'll give you an example. I'm not going to mention any names, but there was a very large company that I worked for 10 years ago, and they had the idea that they wanted to even automate the way they issued laptops for onboarding
Mm,
new customers. One of the executive layer members decided that maybe they'll have a vending, and this was recent, a year ago, they decided maybe they'll have an AI powered vending machine that will
mm,
hand you the laptop as part of the onboarding process for a new employee. I guess what it is, people may perhaps were unrealistic in the expectations of what AI can do and what can replace. They haven't invested in the AI infrastructure, and maybe they underestimated what's involved in trying to take on this work themselves. As a result, there was a slowdown.
mm. Yeah, okay, kind of you see that sometimes, and also sometimes it seems so easy at home when you just like you're typing in to
Yeah,
one of the public AI models, the chat models. That seems very easy, but when you actually put that into an actual live process, it becomes a lot more complicated from a security point of view,
absolutely.
from a model point of view, from a QA point of view, those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Really, we're talking here around large language models or the transformer kind of models that are out there. But do you see other use of other models, for example, like some of the diffusion models that are used for image as an example, or those kind of things? Do you think that stuff's going to bubble through as well in terms of like as part of customer care processes, as an example? I mean, have you come across some of that, or maybe you're even working on some of that?
Yeah, right now we are working on some of that, and you'll see everybody using that at home on LinkedIn. I even myself to try a little bit to my LinkedIn post, give it a little more
Mm,
zazz. I'll include an image created by chat. But application for that, yes, there is a lot of applications. So right now, a lot of these models are able to recognize images and extract the text from them. So if you take a picture of a document
mm,
or an image that has text, it's able to analyze that. You can throw in their PDFs, and PDF is an image, of course, but it's able to understand the text and do whatever analytical work you want on it. But I probably have noticed that in terms of adoption of actual applications for the diffusion models, it's a lot slower than the analytical one or the conversational one, where people are using them more at home. I think there's still some room for development and innovation in that space. But there's definitely some applications in the medical field. So if you are an elderly gentleman and you're struggling with vision and you need to help you see what's in front of you, then some of these models could take a picture and describe it to you
mm.
to help understand what's
Uh,
happening. The last I saw an application where you took a picture of your food and it was able to calculate calories, but wouldn't be very accurate, but it was fun.
Yeah, I could do with that, I think.
Same here.
Yeah, the other thing I use it for is solving my Sudoku puzzle. So yeah, it'll actually do that. So it's interesting. So it feels, say, things have moved forward, but it feels like the advice really is to concentrate on I mean, the same as we normally see, I suppose. Concentrate on processes which are highly manual, the smaller kind of use cases, and bringing it in gradually and thinking like that kind of way, rather than this big sort of massive transformation of everything and being the Uber sort of one size fits all that fixes everything. It's more around like use cases around how do I fix balance inquiry? How do I fix multilingual kind of inquiries? Those kind of things is where you're seeing it starting to come through. It's inching forward rather than leaping forward in terms of adoption.
Absolutely. And I think truly that is the best model to adopt AI, inches, not meters, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. So in terms of adoption, I know you focused on Canada, the US, those kind of things. In terms of like other markets, are you seeing this as like as a global thing in terms of the people you talk to around the world? Are there some markets which you think are further ahead than others, or in terms of interest, or those kind of things? Because the market dynamics does change, and certainly legislation changes as well. Any kind of sense on that?
The European market is very cautious. They have
Mm,
the most stringent requirements when it comes to AI, then followed by the American market, and then finally the Canadian one. And this is just
mm,
from the lens of the accounts receivable. Now, there are certain regions such as the Middle East, UAE, and Saudi Arabia where they've made it a point to invest quite heavily to position themselves as leaders in the AI. Those markets, because of the available funding, excitement, and support, are going to see more aggressive growth.
mm. Do you think that puts the Europeans or the North Americans potentially behind on some of the adoption of some of those things in terms of seeing the benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. So you get support from the Saudi Arabian government, for example. You get really a lot of public funding to innovate. They attract a lot of talent with tax breaks and friendly sort of corporation laws there. Yes, they will see a lot more benefit faster than the rest.
Okay, fantastic. So, well, Russell, it's really interesting to speak to you, and I think I'm interested in terms of what you see the next sort of 5 years how you see the next 5 years playing out, particularly in the collection space. What do you think the day in the life of an agent will be in 5 years' time versus the way it is today? Given that I know the trajectory that you guys are on, but where do you think we'll be in 5 years' time?
I think we'll see a cohesive workforce that consists of human and artificial intelligence agents and
Mm,
omni-channel. Our solution supports email, web chat, text messages, and of course the humanistic over the phone voice.
mm. Okay. So we're no holes barred. That's the sort of the mixed kind of environment is where we're heading towards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Russell, thanks very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Chris.
Thanks.